1-hour meeting with the president of Ukraine. I think there's overwhelming agreement that we need to deal with secure borders, whether it's the Ukraine border, the Israel border, or the U.S. border. I would remind everyone that the U.S. border was a part of the president's original request. So it's been viewed, at least by some people in the White House, that this ought to be part of this overall effort. Obviously, negotiating a border solution is very complicated. As you know, I designated James Langford to be the lead on that. He and I spoke repeatedly over the weekend. The talks continue, but we're not there yet. Hopefully all of this can come together and we can deal with all of these national emergencies in the supplemental at the same time.
As the leader pointed out, we had a chance to not only hear from President Zelensky this morning, but also to ask questions of him. One thing I'll reiterate, and which we reiterated to him, and that is there is strong bipartisan support for assisting Ukraine. And in fact, if we could get, as the leader pointed out, a little bit of work on behalf of the Democrats to actually get some border security provisions included in the package, we could get to something that we could actually vote on. But as of right now, the president has not been willing to engage, regrettably. Senator Langford has been working diligently, trying to make some progress, some headway with the Democrats, but so far they haven't seemed to take that nearly seriously enough. And I hope that changes, because we really do we've got to address the southern border as part of a national security package. In fact, if you look at just the data itself, we've all pointed this out, but last year 169 people were apprehended at the southern border who were on the terrorist watch list. And you add to that the number of what they call special interest aliens, you're starting to talk in the thousands. And then you couple that with the fact that there are 670,000 known gotaways last year. Known gotaways. We don't know how many are unknown gotaways, but you have to believe that there are a lot of people who are getting into this country, who are getting away from the authorities, who also have some really malign intentions when they get into this country. So this issue's got to be addressed. We've made that very plain. We've made it very clear. I think the Democrats, hopefully they're coming to understand that. But in order for us to be able to move forward with a national security package that addresses many of the issues that we think need to be addressed around the world that represent national security, or at least reflect America's national security interests, but that starts first and foremost with securing our own southern border and keeping Americans safe.
Joe Biden and the Democrats have created a deadly and dangerous crisis at our nation's southern border. In doing so, they have betrayed the citizens of this country and undermined our own nation's security. In terms of the size and the scope and the significance of what is happening there, this crisis is getting worse every single day. It's incumbent on Joe Biden and the Democrats to work with Republicans to end the crisis and secure the border. We need to do this for the safety and security of our nation. The southern border is an international hotspot for terrorists, for traffickers. Just last week, the head of the FBI came to Congress and testified that he is seeing blinking red lights from all around the country in terms of the threat of a terrorist attack here at home. And still, day after day, 10,000 illegal immigrants cross our southern border. You know, I remember when President Obama's head of Homeland Security said 1,000 illegal immigrants a day overwhelm the system. So it's no surprise that people are angry and they're afraid. 10,000 a day translates into over 10 million in a 4-year term of Joe Biden. And this flood of illegal immigrants, who are they? Well, some are criminals, very dangerous individuals, drug dealers, people on the terrorist watch list. Look, our communities and safety in our communities are being undermined and people are being overwhelmed. The American people know that they want border security. Republicans have offered reasonable solutions that will work to help make our communities safer. If there's going to be a national security bill, it's going to absolutely have to include border security measures, or there's not going to be a national security bill.
Israeli women are being tortured and raped at the hands of Hamas terrorists. And this has been going on now for 57 days. And the United Nations has been silent on this issue. Now, previously, the United Nations would have decried these actions and called it an abhorrent war crime. But not now. Why? Because these women are Jews. October 7th was the bloodiest day in Israeli history. It is the day that is the single greatest murder and loss of Jews since the Holocaust. The United Nations must speak up. And if they don't, I will be calling for an investigation. We need to come together, let women's voices all across this nation be heard in defense of those that can't speak out for themselves in Israel, in Gaza. So we must make it known this is not okay. Our administration needs to step up. The United Nations needs to step up. And we need to come together and work for the sake and safety of these women.
I want to talk just for a moment about something that I find deeply troubling, and I think all of us do, and that's the rise of anti-Semitism across this country. According to the Anti-Defamation League, the incidents of anti-Semitism in this country have gone up 337%. That's more than 2,000 in the last year. So if you think about what happened on the House side last week with the 3 university presidents testifying when asked about hate speech and hate threats on their campuses, and they fall back to an academic answer about freedom of speech and context, I flash back to when my 3 children went off to campuses themselves. And one of the first things as a parent you think about is the physical safety of their child. And Jewish moms and dads around the country have to think twice and 3 times about what is the position of the higher education institution that they're entrusting their children and young adults with as they're moving into furthering their education. And as a threat comes at them, whether it's acted on or not, an active threat of violence is not to be trifled with. And I think we had a wake-up call last week, quite honestly. And I think these institutions have and the parents have. And so I think we need to make sure that we're facing this head on where it is with the increased attacks we see across this country against the Jewish people, not just American Jews, but Jews all around the world.
As you see the news every week on what's going on at the southern border, one might wonder, are things getting better? Or how could they possibly get worse? Let's look at the numbers for a moment. Just when we thought we hit record numbers in a prior week, the next week breaks those numbers, breaks those records. 12,000 migrants apprehended at the border each day, over 12,000 last week. But here's one of my biggest concerns. The State Department has identified 4 countries as state sponsors of terrorism: Iran, Syria, Cuba, North Korea. How many individuals from one of those 4 countries is being apprehended by Border Patrol? In September, 1,030. In October, it climbed to 1,394. In November, another record, 1,876. But it's not just the sheer volume that's concerning, it's the very real public safety and national security threat that Biden's open border has created. As we heard from the FBI, the blinking red lights, that's not Santa's reindeer. It's the blinking red lights that are coming from the FBI about the terror threats in this country. In my hometown of Bozeman, Montana, over the course of the last couple of weeks, we had 2 separate cases of drunk drivers driving the wrong way down Interstate 90. Turns out both drunk drivers were illegal immigrants. We may be a northern border state in Montana, but we too are part of the southern border crisis. What will it take for Senate Democrats to get on board and secure our southern border? This is not a time for negotiations. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. Everybody else sees the southern border as in utter chaos. It's time for the Democrats to wake up.
Leader McConnell. Leader McConnell.
Yeah, Chad.
Good afternoon. Thank you. In years past, you have said when we approach the holidays, you know, if we don't get the work done by a certain date, we're done. You've not said that this year. Does that mean you anticipate the Senate continuing to be in next session, or these negotiations on the supplemental and the border continuing over the holidays and come back and hit it in January?
Good question. I think the Speaker has said to a number of people, he can speak for himself, but he's apparently said to a number of people they're leaving at the end of the week. So all I have said is practically impossible, even though we reach an agreement, to craft it, get it through the Senate, get it through the House before Christmas. That doesn't mean it's not important. And even though we've been emphasizing the border, I want to remind everybody of the importance of Ukraine. We heard from the president today. He is inspirational. They have fought one of our biggest adversaries for almost 2 years now. We haven't lost a single person. NATO has expanded. The Japanese, the South Koreans, the Taiwanese, the Australians all care about what happens in Ukraine. We're not losing track of that. It's just that border security applies to us as well. And that's why we've emphasized so much that subject in the last few days. Alex?
A number of times in the past, you've gotten together with Joe Biden to negotiate deals on really tough problems, like the fiscal cliff. Do you think there's any chance of that happening now, given the impasse on border security?
Well, I have been in a similar situation where I was the leader of the minority in the Senate, and we had a Democratic administration. And Joe Biden and I did do some pretty big deals. The fiscal cliff deal, the debt ceiling deal. What I have said to him is the only way we'll get an agreement is for you to be involved. Don't just punt the ball up to Senate Democrats. They may never get there. And so it's been difficult to get the kind of support out of the administration itself. Look, we all know he's the only one that can sign a bill into law. Without him, there is no deal. And so I've talked to him about it. I've talked to Zintz about it. Some indication last night that maybe they're going to finally engage rather than just sending James Lankford and his team back to Senate Democrats. So just to sum it up, there won't be a deal until Joe Biden and Republicans reach an agreement. And that hasn't happened yet. I hope that it will, because I think this whole package is important to our country, and I'd like to see it pass.
How concerned are you, Mr. Leader, if this does extend into January and you're up against another spending deadline and a shutdown? Won't that just make the process that much more complicated?
It's not going to be easy. We've got plenty of work to do in January, and if it were possible to pass this sooner, I'd be for that. But we can't do that without full engagement from the White House and the ultimately the person who can sign something into law.